Okay. Welcome to the Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021 day of the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. I want to welcome everyone.
Henry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, your mic seems to be cutting in and out.
Yeah, it was cutting it out all day, and I'm not sure what's going on with it. Can you hear me now? Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, maybe I have to be further away. Not really sure what's going on. You have to try to make it through. Can you hear me now? Okay, I'll just speak loudly. And again, I call the meeting to order. Well, we have a guest with us. So why don't we go around and introduce ourselves? I'm Henry Grandison. I am the chair of the WDIC committee. I'm a county legislature. And why don't Ruby, why don't you go next? Ruby, can you introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Ruby Pulliam, Commissioner of Human Resources.
Okay, Rachel.
Rachel Graham, Vice Chair of WDIC and employee at the County Clerk's Office.
Amy.
Amy Hendricks, Deputy County Administrator.
Lisa.
Lisa Holmes, Interim County Administrator.
Kit.
Hi, everybody.
Kit?
I'm Kit Kephart, Commissioner at the Department of Social Services.
Scott.
Scott Vanderpool, General Manager at TCAT.
Kate.
Kate Shanks Booth, I'm the Director of Tompkins County Youth Services.
Ann.
Hi, I'm Ann Corman, Tompkins County Legislator.
Leslyn.
Hi, I'm Leslyn. I'm a member of the Tompkins County Legislature.
Okay. Rob.
I'm Rob Brown. I'm a member of WDIC, constituent from Lansing, and also a CFO at Finger Lakes Reuse.
Okay. Dominic.
Hey everyone, Dominic Recchio, Communications Director in Tompkins County Administration. Good to see you all.
Okay. And finally, Mia.
Hi, I'm Mia. I'm a rising senior at Cornell right now, so I'm just participating in this meeting today.
Okay. And thank you. Do we have any, and Brittany Gap, and is a county worker who's recording this meeting? I help record it. But I see Mike Sigler has just entered the room. Mike, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, Henry, it's Mike Sigler. How are you?
Fine. Okay.
I got the notice of the meeting, so I'm like, oh, I'll pop in and check it out.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Any announcements from anyone about anything that's going on? I know that if Reverend Clark doesn't show, there is a Pride Month meeting seminar going on the June 25th at noon, I believe. We can get more details about that. We also had a very successful Juneteenth week celebration, which I want to thank everyone who was involved in the process. We had the first historic county citywide Juneteenth celebration, and it went very, very well. And I'd like to also put out a special thank you to Deanna Carruthers, and Shelley Michelle Nunn for all their work in terms of the Juneteenth week celebration. I'd also like to give a brief chair's report about Juneteenth. I want to say a few words about Miss Opal Lee, who was known as the grandmother of Juneteenth. When she was 9 years old, a white mob burned down her family's house because they moved into a white neighborhood. The day of the attack was actually June 19th. 80 years later, Ms. Opal decided that June 19th should be recognized as a federal holiday. In 2016, she pledged to walk 1,400 miles to DC to meet with President Obama. She did not walk the 1,400 miles, but she did walk 300 miles at the age of 89 years old. And she led many walks of 2.5 miles, representing the 2.5 years that Texas slaves did not know they had been freed. On last week when Joe Biden made made Juneteenth a federal holiday, he thanked Miss Opal Lee, and I quote, Miss Opal, you're incredible. A daughter of Texas, grandmother movement to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. So I just wanted to applaud Miss Opal Lee's efforts all these years for making Juneteenth a federal holiday that we'll enjoy for hopefully decades and years to come. The next thing I want to do is approve the minutes. We have the minutes from April 28th. If someone can move them.
I'll move them.
Rachel moves them, Kate seconds it. Any discussion or changes to the minutes? Okay, why don't we just do a vote by hand? Okay. Unanimously. And the next thing we're going to move into are discussion items. I'm going to have Ruby Pilliam talk about workforce demographics and other details, other information. Ruby, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm giving you a preview of the types of reports that we're gathering and we're working on for the workplace demographics. I will try to share my screen here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. This is the overall demographic profile of the Tompkins County workforce. And this is done according to the EEOC reporting status. So we'll have the total full-time employee status by gender, according to EEO classifications of race and ethnicity. They also break it down by age and job categories. So this is the cover page. And what we have, this is as of today, yesterday, 6/22/2021. And we're pulling the data that was reported for 2019, 2018, 2017. I found some 2016 information as well. So we're pulling all of that history of reporting so that we can compare the demographic profile all around for what we have in the system. We'll also be sharing, okay, let me stop this. Any questions about this format before I move on to the Excel?
I just have one quick question. You said you're pulling it back to how far?
I found a 2016 report.
Okay.
And some files that were left by my predecessor. So I'm going through and just pulling what reports that would have already been printed. because our system isn't able to print today a historical review.
What day are you using to look at each year's?
For those historical reports, I'll have to go by the days that they were reported. There's no way for me to today go in a system and get a snapshot for a specific date in a previous year.
But you are able to do that for this year?
I have today's, yes.
But are you able to pull like June 1st?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, for the current year, yes. I just
Okay.
can't go back and pull historical data like that. So if
Okay.
a report was printed or comprised in the previous year on June 30th, I will have that information. If it was pulled August, that's the information I'll be able to pull. And what I'll try to do is get, if it's June 30th of last year or the year before, I'll try to get a June 30th for this year. But this is the format that's printed from the system that we have.
is there any dates that you actually have to report this information on a regular basis?
EEO4 is usually due in September and they cut off June 30th. But it's every other year, so it's not reported every year.
Okay,
So this is the basic, overall reporting that's done. And again, those categories are by gender, by race, ethnicity, by age, and then we break it down by job category. And it's usually just male and gender and race and ethnicity. So that's one of the reports we'll be able to give, hopefully for a 5-year span is what I'm aiming to do. Okay, so if I stop this one and pull up the Excel sheet I have an Excel sheet. When Rachel sent the information that was presented in 2016, I was able to do a report of workforce utilization by department as of today. So I will pull that up and share that one. Here we go. And let's try to make it a little bigger. Now, this was one of the reports that was done in 2016 as a part of this presentation to the committee, well, 2014. So I'm mirroring that report, and it's by departments. You have the total number of full-time employees, the total minorities, the percentage of minorities by full-time employees by the entire county, and then the same number and the percentage of disabled employees. The disabilities are defined as far as Section 55A of New York State Civil Service Law, but the minority categories are all based upon self-identification. So this is by departments, and this is as of today. For instance, the airport has 15 total full-time employees. Of that 15, 1 self-identified as a minority. And of the total percentage of the Tompkins County workforce, that represents 0.14%. So we have that by each department. Grand total, out of 724 employees, 67 self-identifies as minorities. Of that, that's 9.25% of our workforce. 8 registered as disabled according to Section 55A, and that represents 1.10% of our workforce. And that's as of today.
Hey, Ruby. Oh, I'm sorry, Henry.
good, Kit.
I just had a quick question. So I'm assuming that probably this is taken from data when somebody first begins to work for the county. We probably don't have a mechanism to go back. Like if somebody's worked here 20 years, we don't have a mechanism to ask them, do they have a disability at this point or something like that that might have changed.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And not all of them indicate that that demographic profile is optional.
Sure. Great, thank you.
Larry?
Relative to, or in reference to disability, that's why I'm really interested in getting some sort of number that speaks to the range of and number of reasonable accommodations we provide on a regular basis, because I think that's a much more accurate, not, or I don't know if it's accurate, sorry, that's a much more useful number when we're recruiting and when we're talking about the diversity of the workforce.
Right. And I think, as Lisa has mentioned before, the county recently started keeping that data centralized in HR. So there's not a history that we can go back and pull numbers.
But we're starting to track that, and it's
correct.
And what I'm particularly interested in is, sort of scanning the range of types of reasonable accommodations that are being provided, so we can promote the idea and the reality that Tompkins County provides a range of accommodations and is more than happy, or not happy, but willing to do that and has the skill to do that.
Okay.
I mean, that's the kind of picture I think would be really attractive to people who have disabilities. Well, if I go to work for the county, they have a robust way of engaging in discussions around accommodations, and they've offered a range of accommodations and types of accommodations.
Okay.
Also, Ruby, I noticed that the Excel sheet had 724 employees and the other sheet had 719 employees.
Good catch, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Let
so
me explain that to you. I had the same question. But the demographic profile that listed the 719 does not include what you call the JTPAs, the employees that are really not county employees, but their funding is passed through the county, say for our youth employees. And it also does not include any of our Title V employees, whereas the workforce does. Because it goes through payroll, it's included in the workforce analysis. But because they're not county employees, we don't count them in the demographic report that's submitted to the EEOC.
okay. You also mentioned that the people in the Excel sheet was self-selected. Are the people in the other chart also self-selected?
Yes.
Okay, so it's the same,
Yes.
same way. Information is collected the same way for both.
Correct.
Okay. And Carmen? Okay, no, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, did you have more to say?
No, in addition to that, Rachel's look at the historical data also provided, at one time you were receiving reports for new full-time, new hires, also employees separated from the county, and a utilization report with a comparison of the county and the regional areas. So we'll be trying to pull that data for the presentation of the full demographic packet.
Okay. And Carmen?
Thank you for the presentation, Ruby. I was wondering, you said category 5 employees, something like that. Can you explain
Title V.
who they are?
Title V is under COFA.
Sorry, it's the older worker program under Office for the Aging.
And can you explain the difference of why they would be, are they categories different, did you say?
It's
as far as demographics?
Oh, well, they're not counted as county employees. The same with the youth workers, the job training workers. They are funded through grant programs with a specified salary. So it's really just a pass through the county through the payroll system to issue the checks. But other than that, they're not county employees. They're not paid fringe benefits through the county or anything like that.
So we don't include them into the report for the EEOC.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Leslin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Ruby, thank you very much. There's the information that gets reported to the EEOC, and then there's the additional information that WDIC has requested over the years, and you've captured some of it. I think one other missing part, if you hadn't seen that also, was just getting a sense of the levels at which particularly minoritized employees were at in the county.
Right.
So how many employees were managerial level? How many employees of who identify as in the EEOC categories are at the various levels?
Right.
So I'd appreciate seeing that information as well.
I have that that's included in that demographic report.
Mm-hmm.
I could ship that off, the one that's done as of today, so yesterday. They are divided by job category.
That's fine. We also, as a Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, the comparative demographics of our employees to the wider community census numbers were one thing. We also were looking and focused more on the comparative data amongst ourselves within county government itself. So how do we stack up measured against ourselves? If we have 719 employees, what percentage of those employees identify as Asian American, or what percentage,
right,
for those who self-report, identify as African American, or
right,
person with a disability, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Have that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Ruby, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about the workforce demographic information?
No, I will not bore this committee with the woes of gathering data that's entered by several different offices using several different codes at several different points of time. So we will just say that we will get it together and present a comprehensive report. How's that?
That is fine.
No complaints around here.
Larry, you have another question?
Yeah, well, actually, it's a suggestion, which is the WDIC over time has asked for a range of demographic information about employees. I think it would be useful for us to put down somewhere what information the WDIC should basically get. So if there is a change in leadership at the county, somewhere there's a record of the kinds of demographic data that should be talked about in terms of the work we do, because we've constructed lists over time, but there's never actually been like, this is the basic stuff that should always be coming to the WDIC, or regularly coming, or periodically coming, so that we don't have to keep inventing the wheel in terms of the basic data we want.
Okay. Well, Ruby, talking about that, I noticed that you broke it down to gender. Is there a non-binary category on EEOC information?
We have the only, at this point, those reports are canned reports by EEOC.
Right.
Until EEOC changes those designations, what we'd have to do when we make that report is by observation or not include them. If they don't identify as male or female, either they're not included or the creator of the report takes liberties and identifies for them, which is not the way to do it. So we had talked about before, several cities and counties were talking about, doing some sort of resolution urging the EEOC to change its categories, those kind of things. But until that report is changed, we have to use those categories. And that goes for the racial categories as well.
Okay, when people fill out information, do they have the option of choosing?
You're fading out, Henry. I can't hear you.
Okay. At the point of filling out the information, do people have options?
Still can't hear you.
Okay.
Can you type chat?
I'll just skip it.
Okay. Call me.
Yes. Okay, any other questions for Ruby? Okay, well, thank you very much, Ruby, for all the time and effort that you put into that, and you'll be circulating that information to us. Okay.
Thank you.
The next thing on the agenda is a values discussion. I'd like to bring up Amy Hendricks and Deanna to talk about the values issues.
Sure. So I will start. Values, as you guys know, were part of the workplace climate survey. As those teams had come together, they had identified that the lack of organizational values that everyone knew really was something that really we needed to discuss further. And so the team came together, rewrote the organizational values, and I'll paste them into the chat so everyone can see them. At last month's, I believe, JEDI meeting, we had the members of the JEDI team take a deeper look at each of these values to discuss what they actually mean and what they look like in practice. So I'll use the value of integrity. It says here, we commit to honesty and uncompromising adherence to the Tompkins County Code of Ethics. So the members of the team actually pulled up the Code of Ethics to have a discussion about what does that mean and how do we provide the Code of Ethics or the Code of Ethics in the county. And so I think that's the piece of this is where we are with the values is before we roll them out to every employee, we want to be able to have a conversation with the employees and others about what it actually means to have and live these values. And so in the JEDI teams, they spent some time talking about their focused value, thinking about how we live that value. And then they also talked about how do we roll this out? In some organizations, they tend to be posters on a wall or they're kind of there, but how do we make it something that's a little more dynamic? Making sure that as we are recruiting people, these values are front and center of our recruitment materials. As we evaluate people, they're front and center of our evaluations, and making sure that people really understand that they need to uphold these values and how do they feel comfortable. So I believe what we wanted to do with all of you today is give you an opportunity to kind of have some of the similar conversations about the values, ways you think that they could be incorporated in the way that Tompkins County serves our community and our employees. And then if there are ideas that you have on things you'd like to see as we continue to roll out these values, I'm happy to take them. So we had talked about breaking up and then we decided to stay in this larger group, and maybe what the best way to do this would be to start with one value and talk about if there are ways that you could see this in our organization being carried out. So if we were to take integrity, outside of reading the code of ethics here, are there ways that you believe our employees should be living this value, and what does that look like? And I will say Rachel was in that group and was about this quiet when that group started as well. So I don't know, Rachel, if you have any insights of some of the ideas that that group had about how do we carry out the value of integrity?
Yeah, I think we didn't really get talking until I pulled up the code of ethics and started reading it to people. And I remember we definitely talked about the piece of having it in performance evaluations. We talked about recruiting, the hiring, and onboarding.
We also talked about rewriting the code of ethics and making that more of a living document as well. And I know Deanna has been looking at that as they are working on the diversity statement. And so that might be an area where WDIC can also engage a little bit more, is looking at that code of ethics, making sure that we're not only sharing that code of ethics, but we are upholding that as well.
Yeah, how old is that?
I don't remember.
I wrote it down somewhere.
Yes, Scott?
Mary? Oh,
Sorry, Henry.
If somebody raised their hand before me.
okay. Was Scott?
Okay, I just want to say, as a transit agency, we have an opportunity to set an example. So, you know, how do you set an example? It's building relationships is important with integrity. How do you build relationships? You know, it's your concern as an agency, and you know, it's, you know, obviously removing barriers for us, but it's just and fair inclusion, where everybody providing these opportunities. For us, it's really about creating opportunities for people, and that's building trust, right? So, I mean, I think you have to start there to some extent.
Yeah.
So
Larry?
I was thinking, does the code of ethics address diversity and inclusion, or is our ethics around diversity and inclusion represented by the statement that we're revising and the policy that exists? Because it seems to me that I heard a couple things people said about making sure that diversity and inclusion is addressed in employee evaluations at certain levels, or maybe at all levels, making sure. So that kind of stuff might be the kinds of ways in which we as a committee sort of, or an advisory group sort of say, the way we understand that things are being done with integrity is because at the policy and procedure level, certain things exist in employee evaluation, exist in, I don't know, other arenas, but there's actual stuff. It could be as simple as saying that part of the role of everybody in the organization, but certainly at the management levels, we're expecting people to build relationships within and without the organization. That kind of concrete stuff.
Okay, does Lisa, do you want to jump in to comment on that?
Just a word about what the Code of Ethics does and doesn't cover, which is the Code of Ethics, in my understanding, has always been more around compliance and talking about conflicts of interest for elected officials and county employees, nepotism, gifts, things like that. It does not relate to diversity, equity, inclusion. There are other policies that speak more directly to that. So I think the reference to the Code of Ethics is probably misplaced in the values statement. The Code of Ethics exists for a purpose, but it's not this particular purpose.
And I think a piece of this too on this is that the values, so the integrity value is not outside of the other values, which include accountability, equity, and respect. And so I think that's the piece, is the reason the Code of Ethics was brought in is because of that compliance issue around that integrity piece. So I think it's part of it, but there is broader context there.
Okay, Leslyn?
So one of the things that might focus this discussion is to ask our team who's working on this, and together with the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, figure out what are some specific attributes that we want to place on each of these values, real concrete things that people can, point to, focus on, that here are the things we're doing that represent this. So if we say, I'm just throwing it out as an example, if we say under integrity, one of the attributes is continuing education on DEI, keeping up with the, what are the latest best practices and making sure we're implementing those. That's an attribute. That's something real concrete someone can point to that you can evaluate. What sort of educational training are people getting engaged in? What are they being exposed to? Are we actually providing opportunities for those things to happen? I'm not saying it goes with integrity. I'm just giving an example. So it might be useful to really outline 4 or 5 very specific attributes for each of those to help center the conversation so people know what it is they're supposed to do. One of our difficulties often with this work is, things are there, we know what they mean, but people don't know what it looks like in practice. And I think that's what this conversation is about. So I'm suggesting that the group working on it might want to look at that as a way to go.
And that's what the JEDI team had started. And so this is an opportunity for each of you to be able to do that with the values. I think the other piece is Deanna and I continue to collect all the information. She's collected it from JEDI, and I will. If things come up to you as you look at these values and you say, accountability aligns with performance evaluations, that's always an easy one with the accountability piece, or performance conversations and regular conversations as an attribute that we would like to see, you can always also email those to me.
Okay.
Amy, I hear you. If I may, I think what I was really trying to get at is to offer as much specificity as possible. and not general statements, because it still doesn't give people something to really understand. Okay, so what does that mean that I do? If integrity means that, from the way we have it defined, that regardless of whether this is your friend or not, if you hear someone using language that's discriminatory, hurtful in any way, that we value or we have enough integrity that we will intervene on that, regardless of whether the person is working or not working. If we're at happy hour and this is happening, then we are saying, this is an attribute that we will, bring it to the person's attention. We will figure out what is the way to address this issue. So, you're right. So that's all I'm trying to say, is just as much as possible, have some specificity. And again, living document is going to change over time, as things come up.
Well, Amy, did the values team have specific examples under each value?
So the values team was charged with creating the values. They started to have some of the discussions, but then opened it up really to others to help think about how you live those values. What are the really specific examples? I go back to the performance evaluation because that was a very specific example of all managers have an annual performance evaluation and regular performance communications with their employees. All employees are held accountable at these times. So that's really specific, and that's what we want to get into, because then we can start to really talk to people. When we talk about values rollout, there were some other ideas on things like we could celebrate someone that's living the value if we can say, this is how you live that value. And so I think there's broad and then there's more specific. What I think may be helpful is maybe for this group, I can send you the list of values to all of the committee members and have you start to think about what those attributes are. I know we've gotten back some of that from JEDI as well, so you can see a couple of the examples that they have. And then I think if we can just maybe at the next month or 2 months meeting, go ahead and start pulling that, so that really what we'd like to do is roll this out so all of our employees, current and future, are starting to see us talking more about these values.
Okay, that sounds like a very good idea. So why don't you prepare the values and some suggestions about what people can think about, and then we can say maybe get back to you within like 2 or 3 weeks.
That sounds great.
Okay. And Larry?
I was going to suggest that as a way for people to, as a foundation that people can use to sort of spark their thinking, is the existing diversity statement and some of what you hear today, if we're going to talk about the diversity statement as it's being revised, and also the policy, the diversity policy, because a lot of the language in those two documents can be and has been to some extent concretized, like the wanting to look at demographic statements, have demographic information about the county has to do with a long-held value and idea that the WDIC has, which is we want the county to reflect the community. So one of the ethical issues would be, is the work you're doing in whatever place you are, particularly in management, is it actually helping to accomplish the goal of having the community, having the county represent the community, the demographics of the community. So there's lots of language in both the statement and in the policy that people can use to guide their thinking. So it's not like people have to make this stuff up off the top of their heads.
So we're trying to do parallel things right now. And so Larry, everything that you just said is, I believe, is on point in terms of what we should be doing and how we can move forward. So I agree with all those suggestions in terms of making sure the policy aligns with the diversity statement. One of the reasons why Amy and I have had conversations around the values is for that reason in terms of alignment. And so I welcome your feedback and your voice, feedback in the process and how we continue to move forward. So it sounds like if I hear where we are right now in terms of this, we'll come back to the group with more specifics around the values. As I was listening to this and specifically the code of ethics, I do agree with that potential modification in terms of the code of ethics. When it was voted on at the time, one of my caveats was making sure that we looked at that and make sure it was up to date, or if we need something different, we can absolutely do that. And then in terms of diversity statement, having that flow from that. So I'll just do the quick update since we're talking about the diversity statement right now. Anyways, the working group is meeting and working on that. And Larry, I saw your note as a part of me just looking at those things. And also we have some other folks in the working group. We have some work we need to do on the statement. So it's in progress, but to the degree that it's refined and ready to go, we're not there. And so we have some work to do there and we'll keep moving.
Okay, Leslie, you had your hand up? Okay. Well, why don't we put that values discussion to bed, and we'll circulate the value statement and some other information and ask back in 2 to 3 weeks for recommendations or specifics that we can have. Since Lisa has to leave at 4:30, do you have any county administrator updates?
Gosh, Henry, I don't think I do at this time. As Amy said, we're jumping off to consider the lifting of the restrictions in the emergency order with the EOC to see where that takes us. Yeah, and other than that, I can't think of updates that are exactly related to WDIC at this time.
So our next meeting will probably be in person, right?
Could very well be.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Lisa. Why don't I have Deanna, who has a whole host of stuff to talk about, from the JEDI team and from the CDEO office. Give an update.
Sure. First thing is I'll start with congratulations and thanks, a hearty thanks to the folks on the screen for all of the work on Juneteenth last week. And so I feel like this needs to be a round robin in terms of an update on Juneteenth, starting with our amazing producer, Leslie. She did a great job of pulling out all the abilities of all of the staff and our capabilities. So whether it was the performance, the dramatic performance, or whether it was Dr. Scott Brown, it was an extraordinary effort that I was proud of to be a part of, both of these organizations. The city and the county collaborated to do this. And specifically, I'm going to tell you, there was not a stitch of food left on Friday at the employee luncheon. We couldn't believe they ate like they were at home, not in public. And so it was one of those things that I thought was just really extraordinary. So I just wanted to, this update is not about me, this update is about the team. And so if anybody wants to talk about or provide any insights regarding that last week, please jump in, because it was just such a heart-filled and fulfilling week. And since Madam Chair still has that Juneteenth background, can we hear from you as the executive producer of our dramatic reading?
Sure, I'll jump right in. I was glad to be a part of the team pulling all of this together. I was tired in the end. Everyone just did such an amazing job with a week of activities. We certainly will have to have our own debriefing session as a planning team. And I look forward to this being sort of an annual something. The history and information that we shared. There's so many people who have emailed or called or text to say something new they learned about what Tompkins County's contribution to Black liberation was. Just amazing to hear some of the things people learned. For some people recognizing the rich history that's right here in Tompkins County was eye-opening to know that we actually have a cemetery where, you know, a number of us worked in making sure that we put down markers. And I've been involved with this stuff for years, put down markers to recognize some of those soldiers who returned. The entire week sort of focused around the soldiers who fought in the war, who, you know, a lot around the Civil War, and not so much around the fact that the Emancipation Proclamation, debunking some of that, the Emancipation Proclamation isn't the thing that delivered freedom for folks from slavery, that it was actually a lot of the other work that did that, including the Civil War. So it was a great week, lots of good energy put out there. I personally want a record to show a great big thank you to the staff at GIAC for all the work they did for the luncheon on Friday. I know it's one of the things we have to figure out what to do, because, you know, people hear that there's something at GIAC, they just show up. So whether folks were part of the employees of the city or county, they was like, oh, GIAC is doing something. They saw tents, they saw balloons, and they showed up for food. But the entire week of education in every respects, from music to food, you name it. We now know that Ruby can sing her behind off. She is not, I am not done with her yet on stage. I'm not done with Rachel, Deanna, none of them is happening. Henry dodged a bullet, but we can get him next time. He tried to dodge. But overall, really, the purpose, I think, we accomplished, and that was really educating folks. And I don't want it to end. I do want us to take it to the next level. I would encourage encouraging employees to take the walking tour, the historic Southside walking tour, to see the monuments, to view some of the housing that were there on some of the places that are documented on the Underground Railroad. Just wonderful. So those are my 2 cents, or 40 cents.
Thank you, Leslie, for those words. Ann Corman?
Thanks, Henry. I also wanted to give thanks to all the people that organized and participated in the programs last week. Leslyn said most of what I was going to say and more, including that Ruby can't sing. So it was, topping it off with the Juneteenth play on Friday evening, I think it was. It was just a nice way to finish things off. And I learned a lot also, and it helps me, it is helping me to have more discussions with people, more things to talk about as I'm learning more about history. And I just wanted to add in here, I mean, we talked about a little bit about, ethics before. And so I just wanted to mention that I received, all legislators received an email last week. I think I could be safe in saying we were admonished because of something that I did, which was having a Black Lives Matter background. Can you hear me?
Not so much, but go ahead.
Okay, so that we received an email to all legislators admonishing the Black Lives Matter background that I had. and with mixed reactions, even from our fellow legislators, I will say. And so it was interesting to receive that, the day before, or I think it was a day or two before Juneteenth, and but to get that during that week, and just basically telling legislators that we should be neutral, that we shouldn't, that these are political matters. And I responded that I don't believe that's a political matter. I won't go into all the details that I responded, but I really think that representing our values, heightening our values, in any way that we can show that we support the values of the county, I think are important. So until somebody makes me stop doing things like that, makes us stop flying the pride flag or the Black History flag, or I will keep doing things like that. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks for mentioning that, Ann.
If I
Leslie, do
just-
you have-
If I just real quickly just want to say, Annie, and I did not respond because I don't respond to people's commands. Folks don't know me by now, I don't. So this will be my response. This background will be my response to the next legislature meeting. Because the whole Black Lives Matter movement, I wish that person attended the speech by, or the presentation by Dr. Scott Brown, and have a better understanding that it's not a political movement, it's a human rights movement. And it's
Right.
about time we stop turning everything into a political debate. We turned people being enslaved into a political debate. That was not a political issue. And so Black bodies being shot down in the street and killed and murdered in, present day lynching is not a political issue. That's a human rights issue. And so I hope that folks are not going to just cave in to something like that. A lot of those bodies who are gunned down or who are hurt aren't, and not just gunned down, but who are hurt economically, et cetera, aren't about, party politics. They're about survival. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you for those words, Leslie. Ann, do you still have your hand raised? Are you done?
I'm trying to figure out how to put it down. I'll
Okay.
work on that now.
Okay, why don't we go back to Deanna and her updates?
Sure. Was there anybody else who go on the Juneteenth committee that wanted to say anything? Rachel, was that your hand or were you? Oh, I know it was a basketball dunk.
No, I'm sorry. I was just saying goodbye to a colleague.
Okay, and then also just, just wanted to make a note, not that I necessarily, we want to necessarily have a robust discussion, but the group, again, the committee will do what it decides, is we're going to be taking a look at our social media policy. One of the things that happened during the week was that the YouTube feed was filled with, there were numerous hate-filled comments where to the degree people were spelling inappropriate racial slurs, making comments about people of color, specifically Black people, because literally there were no other people of other marginalized population on the screen. So it happened multiple days. And so I appreciate Dominic for reporting it immediately to YouTube. And then we have reached out to our ITS department about the policy. And the last time the social media policy was updated is in 2016. We've also reached out to other colleagues about the social media policy, but as we engage our workforce more, it's important that we take a strong stand on these things. We know that it's a balance that people always talk about what's free speech. I said, well, hate speech, we don't accept hate speech. We don't condone it. It's not acceptable. There are lives behind it. It is an act of cowardice when you don't put your face to things and you call out things on the internet and just frivolously make comments. And so I think this Workforce Diversity Inclusion Committee just should be aware of those things, but that's something that we're working on. I appreciated the response of the working group when they were alerted. Leslie immediately said, let's, whatever information we have, let's keep that so that we can use it for a training moment, but trying to be constructive with what we know. And so I'm very, very grateful for the professionalism of the colleagues that we have, but wanted you to know that we'll be coming back to you for further discussion around that as we conclude talking about Juneteenth. And again, I appreciate all the work that Dominic did in terms of like running offense, trying to, real time, making sure that things are getting deleted, but also paying attention to it and reporting the hate speech. And again, to me, it reaffirms the importance of the work and why WDIC exists, why we do this work, because there's people who are impacted. These are our employees that they were talking about on the screen, calling them out of their names, spelling the most foul of hate speech, if they could, And so, again, it's important for us to call it out when it happens, at the same time, knowing that it will be a challenge. And this hate is in people's hearts. It's not speaking to everyone, but again, it's an act of cowardice. And so we want folks to know this. And so I say this not just because this was Juneteenth, so we've seen a lot of anti-Asian sentiments. And so we call out in support of our sisters and brothers in the Asian community. And so same thing, LGBTQ plus community, all of our veterans, all of our sisters and brothers in these areas, and so when it happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. And so it's really important. We do understand that people, particularly Black folks, have been significantly marginalized, but we don't stand for that in any way, shape, or form. So I'll stop there, but I wanted to raise that awareness for in our conversation and saying that we disavow that behavior here at Tompkins County, and we're going to do what we can, knowing it's going to be hard work, knowing there's going to be pushback and things of that nature, but we cannot in good conscience let that stand or go unannounced. And then as we do more equity work, Juneteenth's coming back, we're coming back bigger and better next year, right? So as a result of this, we might be on stage somewhere, Ruby singing. Don't delete my phone number now after I said that. But with all of these things coming, we're not deterred. And so I hope they're watching. We're not deterred. We're going to work harder at what we need to do and the work that's out there. So I just wanted this committee to be aware what we're facing. We're not surprised, but at the same time, that Tompkins County stands for more. And so I felt like we're adopting county values and related to equity. We're adopting county values of accountability, respect, and integrity. We can't overlook it, and so just wanted to raise that. And so, Larry, I see your hand there, and this is Henry's meeting, so I can't call on people. So,
yes, Larry.
But I just want to say, and not to toot anybody's horn, but I think the response to this hate event by multiple people in the county really represents us at our best. The fact that Dominic was right on top of it, that different aspects of the county are working on this, on these kinds of issues, and I think it's great. I'm sorry that people got attacked. That's not good.
Yes, thank you, Larry, for your words. Deanna, do you have more to cover?
Well, I would also, I can stop there because there's so many good things happening, in the DEIJ world here at Tompkins County. So I won't go on, but just note that we are still working on reimagining public safety. We'll be starting training in the next month or so. We are looking at several policies, including our hiring and onboarding policy. We're looking at our LEP policy, our limited English proficiency policy. That we were rolling out. We actually we'll have two interorganizational conversations. We actually had one today, which was a good discussion. We'll have another one on Monday. We've asked all our departments and deputies. The department has to send folks to have that conversation. We have community forums as well with community partners who serve primarily limited English proficiency populations. And so we have those coming up in the next few days with the goal of taking a proposal and recommendations to the legislature. And so we're grateful for all of the many activities. And so what we will say with all the things happening in the world, there's no shortage of work and opportunities to be a part. So if you want to raise your hand to volunteer on anything, you don't have to be able to sing to do the work, and so we are grateful for all things. And if you don't think you're an actor or an actress, or Leslie will make one out of you. So I'm done.
Okay, Leslie, I see your hand raised.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to raise another topic when you're done with your updates.
Sure, why don't you raise it now?
So I want to raise that August 11th, 2021 will be 100 years since the birth of Alex Haley right here in Ithaca, right down the street from the county. And I wanted to put it on this committee, hoping that there is something that we can be doing as a county to have this centennial celebration in good form, befitting of Mr. Haley. I know we're talking, about it at GIAC, but I think this is something that as a whole, the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee can potentially lead the county in doing something significant. We have the Alex Haley Memorial site, which is on Cascadilla Street, another place that we do a walking tour around on the north side, several places. And so I just wanted to put that on your radar, because I know the committee doesn't meet in July, that hopefully there is something that can be done. You might call a special meeting, I don't know, for that anniversary. It should not go just without anything happening.
Okay, is there anybody who's interested in that issue? Taking up or working on it? Larry?
Yeah,
okay.
I also think the library might be a great partner in working on something about Haley.
Also,
his legacy is a little complicated, but he certainly deserves honor in the place where he was born.
Okay. Rachel?
I'd be happy to help with it.
Okay.
I'm happy to help.
Yep, I'm happy to help too. Also, maybe the History Center, are they involved in the talk, Leslie?
I have not heard of anybody doing anything, and that's why I'm raising it.
Okay. Maybe we can reach out to the History Center and other places. So
yeah, I mean, last year, a number of us were involved in putting down the plaque. And so we installed a plaque at the site. We had a little ceremony doing that last year. But I haven't heard of anybody doing anything, for this 100-year birthday of Alex Haley.
Okay, why don't we set up a meeting about it and we can go forward. Okay, the last group that is around, I assume, is Kit Kephart.
I just want to say thanks to Mike Sigler for that suggestion in the chat.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mike. And Kit, can you give us an update on DSS?
Sure. So we are working hard with the Human Service Coalition on the ERAP program currently, the emergency rental assistance program that the state OTDA is putting together. We're really seeing numbers rise there in terms of people that are applying for retroactive rental assistance as well as prospective rental assistance, people who have been affected through the pandemic, and people who are applying for assistance with utility payments as well, both retroactive and prospective. So we're really pleased that people are reaching out and accessing that program. We are seeing many of our eligibility programs begin to rise. We've been kind of anticipating this as we get closer to the end of the eviction moratorium. I don't, I don't know exactly where that will kind of fall out, but we are certainly working with people. We are in the process of continuing to serve people both in the building as well as remotely when that's necessary, and kind of continuing to work with people no matter whether they're affected by the pandemic or in a broader sense. We are just kind of specific to this committee. We are really pleased with some of the work that we have been doing around, I think I've talked about it here before, around what's called blind removals, that when in our child welfare team, when we have to make an intervention with a family and potentially move a child into foster care or into alternative care while parents get treatment or supports, we have instituted a new method of working with families that really removes all of the information that might lead to bias, or as much of that as we can. And so we're really pleased with some of the ways that seems to be working. It's still with a very small number of families at this point, but we are instituting that. And our child welfare team as well is working on a new modality called Signs of Safety, which is really promoting positive interventions and trying to connect families with a network of supports, not just intervention on behalf of the department, but to really pull in supports that hopefully will help that family stay connected and stay unified. So lots of stuff going on, and we're trying to look at keeping everything going despite all the obstacles these days. So thanks.
Any questions for Kit? Leslie?
Hey, Kit, thank you for that. Can you remind me, just a Cliff Notes version, if somebody wants to access the, or needs, not wants to, but needs to access the ERAP funds, where do they go? They call
Sure.
211? Or?
Yep. 211 is the central port of contact right now. We have received money through OTDA, and then we've contracted with Human Service Coalition. Certainly people can access the ERAP portal on their own, but it is a bit tricky. There's some bugs that OTDA has told us they're trying to work out. So people have sometimes not been successful and have gotten kicked off the portal when they're trying to do it alone. So yes, 211 is set up to receive their calls, answer questions, but also to actually literally walk through the portal with them and help them apply online. They can spend, for most people, it's taking about an hour to complete the application, and they'll go through the full process with people. So they're also doing outreach in a number of communities in the county. So if somebody wants to work directly face-to-face, they will also have information about when they're going to be where, so people can work with them on site.
May I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
So one of the things that came to my attention is someone saying that because they had back in, I don't know, August of last year, and gotten assistance through the rent relief program that INHS was doing with URA funds, that they understand that they're not eligible to get assistance through ERAP. And do you know that to be the case?
I don't off the top of my head. I could go back and look, but I would definitely, do you know, Leslie, if they reached out to 211 and were told that?
I don't know, but I think that's my understanding.
That's it. Okay. For anybody who hasn't reached out, I would definitely encourage them to call 211. It is possible, one of the things that is happening right now is that there are different pots of support. that are out there. Like we are encouraging people right now that if they qualify for ERAP, to go ahead and apply for that first, as opposed to say the ESG program that we are supporting people with, because the ERAP benefits are better. And then if they don't qualify for some reason through the ERAP, then we'll help them with the ESG funds. But I would say two things. One is to definitely reach out, make sure that that really is the final word, and to make sure that if they've applied for funds for a certain period of time, that they might be eligible for another period of time through ERAP. But then also to check with us to see if they might be eligible through ESG as well, even if they've received other funds. So it's, there are different pots and they run into each other a bit, but I think to explore all options is the best.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Kit, I was wondering, have you talked to anyone about the child tax credit?
Henry, I meant to get back. I have been swamped and I'm so sorry. Yes, so we actually, so I'm glad you brought that up because that should have been part of my report. And again, my brain's not completely clicking today. So yes, the child tax credit is something that we have been promoting with our clients. Our child support program in particular has been talking with people about that. And we can certainly, if you hear of people that are curious about it, refer them to us and we can help direct them on that. And the good news about the child tax credit, from what I understand, is that it does not end up impacting people's benefits, which is a wonderful thing. So people, if they have an active temporary assistance or SNAP case, it's not going to reduce that, which so oftentimes when people are getting another benefit from some other program, it will impact what they're eligible for. So yeah, we are promoting that and letting people know, but please feel free to refer people to us as well if you hear that there's a need.
Kate?
Yeah, Ken, I just also wanted to bring up, I thought I heard John say from Human Services at the Human Services Cabinet that June is those that are most in need for the rent assistance for 211, and then that would change to first come, first serve in July, right? So if people are in need of it right now, they will get preference depending on the need of that, so they should apply sooner rather than later.
Yes, so there's some very specific qualifiers around that, which are on the OTDA website. They have to do with people that are affected by things like domestic violence or some of the higher priority and more vulnerable folks. So definitely, have people, if they can access the OTDA website, they can look at those priorities. But regardless, I would say, what we're encouraging people to do is to get your application in as soon as you can, even if you don't think that you are in that high priority category, because they are saying it's going to be first come, first serve. So even if they don't accept somebody into that high priority first month, we want people to have their applications in so that they get accepted quickly after that. So yeah, good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, and with the child tax credit, they'll start getting checks in July.
Yeah.
It's
a fantastic benefit, and Biden is saying that he's going to try to extend this maybe for years, which would be such a huge help to people. So yeah, I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I did the Child Tax Awareness Day on Monday at Health and Human Services, but again, they really want it promoted because it only is going to run for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then they're hoping that Congress will renew it after that.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
so thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that, Henry.
Sure. Does anybody have anything else to announce? Any new business or anything else? Deanna?
It's not new business, but I'm sorry for being late, but have we done any acknowledgement of Pride Month this month? I know there was an email, there was a proclamation, but just wanted to raise that important distinction of this month and recognize all of our LGBTQ plus sisters and brothers this month. And so that was all, but it may have already been discussed. So
yeah, we did. I mentioned it. I also mentioned the the webinar that Dr. Clark is doing. Do you know the details of that in terms of it's 12 noon on Friday? Okay.
Yeah, it's 12 to 1 on Friday. And I put a link in, it's probably toward the top of the chat now, but I put a description of the event. Oh, it's to 1:15, sorry.
Okay.
And the YouTube link is there.
Yeah, he sent another a follow-up today, so I was trying to check the time. Thank you, Rachel.
I will be co-facilitating that event, so come hang out with us.
Okay. Well, hearing no new business, maybe someone can make a motion to adjourn. Larry and Kate, and I assume that there's no discussion on it. Everyone have a good day, and I'll see you back in 2 months. Although remember, we're going to get other information to you about the value system and possibly about Alice Haley's centennial birthday. Okay.
Have a good night.
Goodbye.